To date, there have been 877 officer-involved shootings that resulted in the suspect being killed. Now, that doesn't mean the officer actually shot the person. Sometimes they take their own lives or they're shot by somebody else in the same incident. But there have been, at this point, 877. We're going to cover a few of them right now. We're going to start in Columbus, Ohio, at the Auto Title South Franklin County Clerks of Courts. And the suspect in this one is 29-year-old Austin Huntzinger, and this was an armed robbery, and there was also another suspect whose name is not given. Overnight, a suspect exchanged gunfire with an officer. Both were hit by bullets. The incident occurred in the Great Southern Boulevard Plaza when the officer was responding to an armed robbery in the parking lot around 7 a.m. When he arrived, the officer found and confronted the suspect, who fired shots at the officer. The officer then simultaneously returned fire. This is written very poorly. According to sources, the officer was shot in the leg and was taken to Grant Medical Center. The suspect was also transported to the Grant Medical Center, but later died. The officer has been reported to be in stable but serious condition. The Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation will now take over the scene and do the investigation. So, I don't know. This is a typical story. The guy, it's an armed robbery. The cop confronts the guy, and the guy shoots at the officer, and the officer returns fire. And I guarantee you, unless it's a very bad officer, if you get in a gunfight, especially at close range with an officer, they are going to have better aim than you. They practice way more than you. I mean, I'm sure there's some people that practice a lot, but I'm sure the police officers have been trained far better than your average, armed robber. All right, Chicago, Illinois. We got an adult male who was killed, and this looks like bank robbery suspect. A man was found dead in his Austin home after nearly 20-hour standoff with the police SWAT team. About 9 a.m., FBI agents were executing an arrest warrant in the 5400 block of West Walton Street on a man suspected of federal bank robbery charges when the man barricaded himself inside the home. After hours-long deliberation with crisis negotiators, a SWAT team entered the home and found the man dead with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Cook County Medical Examiner identified the man as 35-year-old Gene Carlos Mateo. CPD is conducting a death investigation. So this is yet another typical story. These guys barricade themselves in and then they end up taking their own lives. That happens very often. All right, let's go to Bellefontaine, Ohio, where our suspect was 21-year-old Kyle Richardson. And let's see. A tense standoff between law enforcement and a wanted individual identified as 21-year-old Kyle Richardson of Lakeview ended in tragedy as Richardson died from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. There's another one. The incident, which lasted for hours, unfolded on the late afternoon, Wednesday, August 9th, and drew the response of multiple law enforcement agencies. Received information that he was wanted for second-degree felonious assault. Okay, so basically this guy was wanted. The police show up. He barricades himself in, hours-long standoff, and they go find him, and it turns out he had taken his own life. So that's a lot of these so far today that have been self-inflicted. Okay, we're going to go to Provo, Utah. Oh, this one. Okay, our suspect in this one is 75-year-old Craig Robertson, and he was killed. And this is called political violence, this one. We're not going to read too much of this. A suspect shot and killed by FBI agents early Wednesday in Provo was connected to alleged threats against Joe Biden. The FBI says its agents were attempting to serve arrest and search warrants in Provo when they shot and killed the suspect, now identified as 75-year-old Craig Robertson, at around 6:14. I'm not going to read any more of this. I'm sure everyone's heard this story. This guy, Craig Robertson, he's 75 years old. He weighs like 300 pounds. He walks with a cane. He can barely get up off his chair on his own. He has to drive himself to church, which isn't even a block away. The guy's old and out of shape. And there's so many, if I could read this whole thing to you, and probably every single thing that I say to you would end up being proven a lie. So I'm not even going to read this. Article is really long. Yeah, this article is super long. I'm not even going to read it. There's so much to this story that's not true that's being told right now. And because I can't determine what's true and what's false, I'm just going to avoid that story altogether. Let's go to Essexville, Michigan, where 46-year-old Daryl Socia, that's our suspect, and he was killed in this one. A stabbing suspect is dead after being shot by police. Several law enforcement agencies responded to Saginaw Bay Estates in Mary Court and Hampton Township about 1:30 a.m. for reports of a stabbing. Police officers were entering a trailer when 46-year-old man started shooting at them from across the street. The man continued to fire bullets at the trailer for about an hour and a half. Wow, how many bullets did this guy have? The suspect was transported to an area hospital where he was later pronounced dead. No officers were injured. Prior to police arriving, the suspect broke into a trailer and stabbed a woman. The suspect and the victim knew each other. The woman was treated for her injuries and released. Police believe there were children at the home at the time of the stabbing. This was a domestic situation. There's no threat to the public. Veteran encouraged everyone in domestic situations to get help and find resources. So this was some sort of domestic incident, which they don't really say what it was, but this guy had enough bullets with him to get in some kind of shootout with the police for an hour and a half, and he was later pronounced dead. It doesn't even say in this that the suspect was shot by police. Okay, it does. The suspect was shot by police. So the police returned fire, but he held off for apparently an hour and a half. So he had a lot of weapons, or a lot of bullets at least, on him. So now we're going to go to Savannah, Missouri, where we had an adult male suspect that was killed. At around 9:30 a.m., officers from Buchanan County and Savannah Police Department responded to calls from the Savannah housing complex at the juncture of South 7th Street. Callers were reporting that there was an individual at the Savannah housing complex that had active warrants out for his arrest and that he was armed with a firearm. Officers made contact with the individual at the apartment, and the individual locked himself in the bathroom, and a shot went off. Officers then exited the property, contacted Missouri State Patrol for assistance. Teams were deployed to the scene. They responded to the call. St. Joseph Police used a robot to gain entry into the apartment in order to make contact with the individual and discovered he was deceased inside the apartment, and the individual had apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. No other citizens or officers were injured at the scene. The name of the individual has not been released. Well, there's been a lot of, over half of these, I think, have been self-inflicted, and, guys that are wanted and they don't want to be taken in, or whatever's going on with them at the time. They just lock themselves, in a room or in a house, or, lock themselves in somewhere and then end up taking their own lives. Okay, so we're going to go to Conyers, Georgia, where 31-year-old Charles Rice was fatally shot. The GBI is investigating an officer-involved shooting in Rockdale County, Georgia. The Rockdale County Sheriff's Office said GBI to conduct one man was killed during the incident. No officers were injured. Preliminary information indicates that at about 10:40 p.m., Walton County deputies attempted to conduct a traffic stop on a person driving a 2001 GMC Yukon that had canceled insurance. The driver of the Yukon, Charles Rice of Covington, refused to stop the SUV and accelerated away from the deputies. Deputies pursued Rice, where they performed a precision immobilization technique. Once the GMC came to arrest, Rice got out of the SUV, and of course he ran. Deputies tased Rice, who pulled out a firearm from his waistband. Rice fired his weapon at deputies. The deputies returned fire, hitting Rice and killing him. A female passenger in the Yukon was not injured. Rice had active felony arrest warrants at the time of the incident. Once the investigation is complete, the case will be given to the Rockdale County District Attorney's Office for review. So this is another one. These guys, I don't know what these people are thinking when they start firing on the police. You know, he was tased, so they were close to him, but not close enough to tase him. And he pulls out a gun and he starts shooting. I don't know what he thinks is going to happen. You know, they're going to return fire if you shoot at them. And, you know, like I said earlier, they have better aim than you. Okay, let's go to Mulberry, Florida, to the Christina Animal Hospital, where we have an adult male, 45-year-old Marquise Lynn Baker, who was killed in this incident. And a wanted Jacksonville man died Tuesday afternoon after Polk County police say a SWAT standoff lasted for more than 4.5 hours. Marquise Lynn Baker, 45, had a warrant out for his arrest after he failed to appear in court, facing 11 counts of child sexual abuse. According to the release, Baker was listed as a missing person based on statements he made to his defense attorney. The release states that deputies were aware that Baker was in Barstow, Florida, in around 10:27 a.m. when they located his vehicle. Police say after locating Baker's vehicle, deputies followed him for about 5 minutes until he turned off and stopped his car. The release indicates that, I'll skip over some of this. At about 3:20, Baker put a .40 caliber handgun to his head, fired a single bullet into the left side of his head. Okay, the SWAT medics immediately began performing life-saving measures on Baker as he was taken to a local hospital where he was pronounced dead at 3:50 a.m. The news release states that no deputies discharged their firearm during the standoff. Wow. This was over half. I think I had 9 of these stories that I had pulled out, and I just pulled 9 from the list. Like I told you, there was 877, I think I said at the beginning of this. There's a ton every day of this happening. And there's probably like that this happens. I just pulled 9 or 10 random ones out, and there's this many of them where the guys are taking their own life. The suspects are taking their own life. And if you think about a cop's job, I mean, you hear all this stuff on TV and stuff like that, and all what the news tells you about this stuff. But if you think about a police officer's job, you don't think about how many times they have to watch somebody kill themselves. All that stuff mentally affects these officers because you can't unsee this stuff. And so it's not even just the stuff that they witness that they're a part of, if like they have to discharge their firearm, but it's watching other people and the stuff they do to themselves. All this stuff mentally is, you know, takes a toll on the police officers. I mean, the more I've done this, done these videos, the more I really appreciate what police officers go through, because their job is not easy. I knew it was hard before, but the more of these stories that I read, the more I realize just how hard it really is. All right, well, that was the last one. This is a little different take than I normally do on the In the Line of Duty videos where the cops are the ones that are being shot. But I find that there is value to hearing these as well, just so we get more of a well-rounded view on what it is actually that the cops do to try and prevent crimes. If you like this kind of video, hit that like button and maybe leave a comment in the comments and let me know your thoughts on them. And if you're not already, consider subscribing. We'll have these kind of videos every week posted at the same time on Thursday afternoons, so keep an eye out for them, and thanks for watching.